Alexa, play the news from Reuters.
From Reuters. This is Reuters.
Despite the Russia.
Donald Trump on Friday told reporters he found it easier to deal with Russian President Vladimir Putin than Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. And he said he believed the Russian leader, who launched an unprovoked attack on Ukraine more than 3 years ago, when Putin said he sought peace.
Yeah, no, I believe him. I think we're doing very well with Russia. But right now they're bombing the hell out of Ukraine. I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. And they don't have the cards.
Earlier on Friday, the U.S. president had raised the prospect of imposing large-scale sanctions on Russia. It comes after a Reuters report earlier this week that the White House was preparing to give Russia possible sanctions relief as part of the push to end the war and improve diplomatic and economic ties with Moscow.
If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin.
3 years of solid support for Ukraine was erased exactly 1 week ago in a shouting match in the Oval Office between Trump and Zelensky. Trump afterward canceled U.S. support for Ukraine and ended the sharing of crucial intelligence, measures that stunned allies across Europe and were met with approval in Moscow. Officials in Washington and Kiev have tried to patch things up since, and a U.S. delegation is set to meet with counterparts from Ukraine for talks in Saudi Arabia next week. Trump has continued to suggest Ukrainian leaders need to prove they are serious about ending the war they did not start.
As you know, we're meeting in Saudi Arabia on sometime next week, early. And we're talking, I find that in terms of getting a final settlement, it may be easier dealing with Russia, which is surprising because they have all the cards. I mean, and they're bombing the hell out of them right now.
The loss of American support comes at a crucial time for the Ukrainian military. Russian forces have almost surrounded thousands of Ukrainian troops who stormed into Russia's Kursk region last summer. Open-source maps show a Russian counteroffensive has nearly cut the Ukrainian force in Kursk in two and separated the main group from its principal supply lines.
Very difficult to deal with, the Canadian representatives.
U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening new tariffs on Canadian lumber and dairy products.
Canada has been ripping us off for years on tariffs.
The products were his latest targets on Friday, in a tariff saga that has given investors, businesses, and consumers whiplash. Just the day before, he suspended tariffs of 25% on most goods from Canada and Mexico, tariffs that he had imposed earlier in the week. Trump has said that reciprocal tariffs would be implemented on April 2nd instead, to equalize any duty rates between the three countries. Under the 2020 U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement on trade that he negotiated and signed, there are almost no tariffs on products crossing North American borders. Canada's high tariffs on dairy products to protect farmers is among the few exceptions.
They make it impossible for us to sell lumber or dairy products into Canada.
There are multiple other Trump tariff actions in play. Next Wednesday, Trump's administration will effectively raise tariffs on steel and aluminum. This will heap more duties on imports from Canada and Mexico, the biggest foreign suppliers of the metals. Canada's industry minister says that Ottawa's having a hard time understanding what needs to be done to avoid the tariffs. Trump also mentioned India's high tariff rates on Friday, but said the country had agreed to lower its import duties.
Donald Trump on Thursday signed an executive order establishing a U.S. cryptocurrency reserve. It will be capitalized with Bitcoin seized by the federal government as part of criminal or other legal proceedings. That was according to a post on X by Washington crypto czar David Sachs. Trump is then expected to formally announce the plan at a crypto summit Friday in the White House. Earlier this week, he named the 5 digital assets to feature in the reserve: Bitcoin and Ether, and smaller tokens XRP, Solana and Cardano. However, it's still not clear how the reserve will work or what benefits it will offer to taxpayers. Sachs said the federal government would try to maximize the value of its holdings while offering few further details. He said the US would not sell any Bitcoin deposited in the reserve, but would keep it as a store of value. Sachs called the reserve a digital Fort Knox. Trump came to power promising to be a crypto president. He has since appointed fans of digital assets to key positions. But Bitcoin has given up most of the gains made since his election win, with some investors disappointed by a lack of concrete moves on the sector. On Thursday, one told Reuters the new plan was the most disappointing outcome possible. With the reserve set to do no active trading, he said it was just a fancy name for crypto funds already held by the government. Bitcoin fell over 5% immediately following Sachs's social media posts.
That's all for now.